Hey foodies, welcome back to my kitchen. Today I'm cooking up a few things on the grill and also in the kitchen. On the menu we're having some beef smoked sausage, we're having some steak, ribs, and chicken wings. We're also going to have some collard greens, some sauteed potatoes with spinach, and macaroni and cheese. This is basically the behind the scenes in case you want to do something like this for your own family. Now, I'm cooking this for myself and a hubby, so it's only two people in this house. But because of the amount of food, we'll have this for dinner for at least 3 days. I'm gonna also pack those greens in the freezer too, because I'm the only one in this house that eats greens. So speaking of greens, let's get started. So with my greens, I use applewood smoked bacon as well as turkey legs. Now you can use turkey legs, turkey wings, you can use the turkey necks, all that, but we're gonna use the drumsticks today. So first of all, I'm going to cut up the bacon and then I'm going to saute it till it's brown. I'm going to also add in some minced garlic and I'm going to also add in some onions. Now with the onions that I'm using like the green onions, so I've chopped those up and I'm adding them in here. And I'm also going to use some chicken base. All the ingredients to this is on my website at plussizeinchicago.com. And you're just going to look up collard greens and that recipe will appear. So you want to get all of that melted together. And like I had said earlier, I'm going to add in some green onions. And I'm basically just using like the top parts of the onions as well as like the very bottom. And I like it because it's like a milder flavor than the regular onions. And it's just something that's different. So you can use whatever onions that you like, whether it's white onions, the Spanish onions, or the regular yellow onions. But I'm using the green onions there. So I've placed the drumsticks into this pan, and then I'm going to also add 6 cups of water. And after I've added that water, I'm going to cover it with a lid, and it's going to simmer for about 45 minutes. And in between that time, I'm going to, be doing a few other things in the kitchen, like getting the grill started. But what you want to do is make sure that you cover this and allow this meat to simmer. And then you want to start cutting up your collard greens. Now, I normally would have used the glory greens because that's like one of my favorites because it's already pre-cut and you can rinse them off and everything. But for some reason, the local grocery store that I went to did not have the glory greens. So I had to get up in this kitchen and actually slice and dice these collard greens. Thankfully, they were mostly clean, but of course, you want to do your own cleaning to them too. Now, what I've done is this is like 3 pounds of collard greens. And again, like I had said earlier in the video, I will be freezing these because I'm really the only one in this household that actually eats greens. So I'm not going to be able to eat all these. So I'm going to cook them and then I'm going to put them in some freezer bags and freeze them in smaller freezer bags. That way I can eat them whenever I want something, just put them inside a little small pot, let them simmer, and they're good to go. So those will be like my side dishes whenever I have a taste for them. So what I'm doing here is just slicing these up. I'm gonna put them in my colander and I'm gonna rinse them off real good to make sure there's no grit in there. And like I had said earlier, when I got these, they really weren't that bad. So, I did a lot of rinsing of them, before I started to put them into this pan. Now, I don't recall how big this pan is, but it's wide. And from the video, you probably won't be able to tell how wide it is, but it is wide. But it's not super deep like you would normally use as a stock pan. But it's my favorite pan for cooking greens, so I'm going to do this. Now, again, like I said, I have 3 pounds here. So what I'm going to do is put a pound in, stir it up a little bit, put the lid on top of it, and let it simmer down for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to come back, put the next pound of greens in, and do the same thing. Let it simmer down with that top on it. And then I'm going to come back with the third pound of greens, put them in there, let it simmer with the top on, and then, we're good to go to have everything in there. Yeah, so this is the second pound of greens, and I'm about to put the final pound in, the third pound of greens in here. And like I said, again, you just want to make sure that it's simmering down, and you put it, put your last in there. Now, if you have a big stock pot, like I actually do, I have like 3 of them. But if you have a big stock pot, you can just throw them all in there at one time. You ain't got to worry about like you want to simmer in it, putting them all in to fit into that pan. But if you're using a smaller one like I am, this is what you'll do to be able to get everything in there. So I'm going to simmer this down just for a little bit, and while that's happening, I'm going to get started on getting the ribs and the meat together before I start adding the seasonings to these greens. So this is my favorite rib rub. It's the Oklahoma Joe's rib rub, and then you can find it on any website, but I also have it on my website too, and that's at plussizeinchicago.com. And what you want to do is search for rib rub. Anyway, the ingredients in here are like sugar, regular sugar, brown sugar, garlic powder, chili powder, smoked paprika, cumin, salt, onion powder, white pepper, as well as some ground black pepper. And what I've done is, use my food processor to mix everything up. You can also use like a grinder for your seasonings. And then what I'm going to do is pour that into the shaker that I've gotten off of Amazon. If you want to find that shaker, I'll put the link inside of the description. And you can, pour your seasonings in there, and it's just easier to add to your meats. So what I've done is rinsed off these baby back ribs, and I'm going to pull the membrane off the back of them, and I'm going to rinse them off again, and I'm going to pat them dry before I start adding my seasonings into them. But before I get to do all of that, I want to make sure that I'm cutting any of the fat that's off of there as much as I can. Just want to clean this up a little bit, and I'm using like some kitchen scissors to get that done. So again, you're going to rinse them off, you're going to pat them dry, and you're going to put them like on a cookie sheet, and let it be like at room temperature before you put all of this on the grill. So before doing all that, I need to go and check on my greens. Now, everything is starting to simmer down. So again, there are 3 pounds of greens inside of this pan, and what I'm going to do is add a little bit more water to that. So I'm adding 2 cups of water, and then I'm also going to use some Sazon. So I do like the Sazon seasoning because it kind of like, I guess, melds everything together, kind of like if you was to use like Bailey's. It just like gives like an extra punch of flavor to whatever food that you're cooking. So I'm adding like 2 packs of Sazon to this, and it's the regular Sazon. And once I've added that, I'm going to also add some apple cider vinegar. I'm using like a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar that I'm going to pour into there. And then I'm going to have like a combination of multiple seasonings. So I'm using some poultry seasonings, some black pepper, some onion powder, as well as some garlic powder. I've also have some red pepper flakes and some granulated sugar. And again, you can get the ingredients as well as the amount of seasonings on my website at plussizeinchicago.com. You want to look up collard greens. So yeah, so I want to make sure that these seasonings are, getting stirred up in there really well. I got some on top of that turkey leg, so I want to make sure I turn that turkey leg over so that the seasonings is getting into, that pot liquor that is being created right now. So yeah, so I'm going to end up cooking that for about another 1.5 hours. So, set your timer for that. Cook that for another 1.5 hours and let that all the seasonings get melded in there. So now we're getting back to these ribs. So I'm going to use some French mustard for my binder. You don't have to do this, but I do like how the seasonings kind of stick to that. If you don't use mustard, I would advise you to use like an olive oil or a light oil like that before adding your seasonings to that. And if you're using mustard, you're not going to taste a mustard flavor. Okay, so that's some people get like kind of weirded out about that, like, why am I putting mustard on there? It's just as a binder. It's not going to taste like mustard. So anyway, I'm adding the seasonings that I had used in my food processor, that Oklahoma Joe's rib rub recipe. And so I'm adding that. I'm also using my shaker, and I'm going to put that seasoning on the top of the ribs as well as the back of those baby back ribs. As I mentioned earlier in the video, not only are we putting some ribs on the grill, we're also going to be doing some chicken wings as well as some beef smoked sausage and some steaks. I'm going to show you the seasonings that I use with that. So with my chicken wings, I'm going to use some olive oil as a binder, and then I'm going to use the elote seasoning from Spinach Asadero. Spinach Asadero, you're going to see that seasoning on a lot of my videos. I really love the flavor profile that this brand does with their seasonings. If you don't see me using Spinach Asadero, you're going to see me using Kinder's, something like that. But this elote seasoning is really good for chicken as well as pork and also seafood too. So I'm going to add a good amount of that in there, and I'm going to mix all that together, and I'm going to set this meat aside. And again, at this point, this is going to be like a room temperature, which is really good, before you start adding the food to the grill, because you don't want to put like super cold meat on your grill. You want to make sure it's like at a room temperature, but a safe temperature. You don't want this food sitting out like for hours. You want to say at least no more than 20 to 25 minutes. The next thing I'm going to do is season up the steak. So I added some olive oil to it, and I'm going to use the carne asada seasoning from Spinach Asadero. And if you have not heard of these seasonings, you can get them from their website. I first heard about them during the pandemic, and I saw them on Instagram, and I just been in love since then. So you can go to the Spinach Asadero website to get it, or you can go to somewhere like Walmart, Sam's Club, or maybe even Amazon to get the seasonings from there too. So I'm going outside and I'm checking on the charcoal. It's red hot. I'm going to pour that. I'm going to use the indirect method for the meats. So that's basically just putting your charcoal to one side of the grill. And I'm still getting used to this grill. I bought this grill this year a few months ago, so I'm still getting used to it, but I'm getting better. But yeah, so I'm gonna put my meat on the opposite side of the grill. So basically, again, this is the indirect method. And for my steaks though, I will put that on top of the area where the charcoal is at. And I'm going to sear the steaks for about at least 6 to 8 minutes on each side. And after they've seared on each side, I'm going to put those steaks on the opposite side where the wings are currently at, just so it can start cooking in that indirect method. So basically it's almost like baking at that point. But I don't want to overcook the steaks because I'm going to be back in the kitchen cooking the rest of the food. So again, sear it on one side, sear it on the other, and then put it on the opposite side where all the other meats are at. Going back into the kitchen, I'm going to dice up these yellow potatoes. I'm adding some butter, some olive oil, as well as some minced garlic there. And I'm going to pour these potatoes in there, and I'm adding like some Dano's seasoning, some chili powder, as well as some Cajun seasoning. Just adding a little bit of each, stirring it up in the pan, covering it, and let it cook for at least about 20 minutes on like a medium heat so that you get a nice sear to it, but also so that the potatoes become very tender. Let's go check on these greens. So the turkey meat is like falling apart now. Falling apart so much that now I'm starting to see like the bones start to shred. So I had to pull the turkey out of the greens and pull out any of those bones that got shredded. Because I definitely was not expecting that. But I'm like, man, this turkey is like super duper tender. So I pulled all the meat off of the turkey, discarded any of the bones that may have gotten into those greens. And I'm going to put all of that meat on top of the greens and then stir it up real good. So those 2 turkey drumsticks had tons of meat in there. So these greens are going to be nice and flavorful as well as meaty, the way I like it. So with the greens, since it's been simmering for an hour and a half, they're done now. So I'm going to add like some crushed red pepper flakes to it just to top it off. If you like a little heat to your greens, adding some crushed red pepper flakes will do it. But if you don't like any heat to your greens, you can totally skip that. So yeah, those are my greens. Don't they look good? They tasted fantastic. And again, I'm going to eat a little bit of this today, and then I'm going to freeze the rest of them in some smaller freezer bags so I can have them at any time that I want. So the greens are done, and I'm going to now get over to these potatoes. I've added a little spinach there because, like I told you before, my husband doesn't eat collard greens, so I wanted him to have some type of nice healthy veggies to his food too. So I've added some spinach there. I've cooked that for about 5 minutes and stirring all those flavors together, and I'm going to add in some garlic butter as well as some grated Parmesan cheese as well as some red pepper flakes. So you want to add that garlic butter to there, cover it with a top, let it melt and get all nice and melted together. Stir it up, add you some garlic, not garlic, but add you some Parmesan cheese as well as some crushed red pepper flakes. And again, if you don't like heat, you can skip that part, and add it as much as you want and cover it up for another 5 minutes, and that's done too. Yeah, so those are the diced potatoes. Very simple recipe. I hope you guys like it if you do try it out. The last side dish that I'm going to make is my macaroni and cheese. This is a recipe that you can find on my website. Again, plussizeinchicago.com. Just search macaroni and cheese. I'm using the roux method for this, so I'm making a cheese sauce. On my website, I do have the no roux method and no egg method. So if you're looking for something like that, you can find that too. So the seasonings that I have in there besides butter, I'm also using flour. I'm also using some salt, black pepper, onion powder, garlic powder, Cajun seasoning, as well as some smoked paprika. Now, I'm also going to use some regular milk, like a 2% milk, as well as a heavy cream. And the noodles that I'm using is the Sautéed noodles. I'm using like 2 cups of that, as well as 2 cups of elbow macaroni. And in that cheese sauce, I'm going to use just 2 cheeses. So that is actually a Mexican cheese that I've added. And within that Mexican cheese, it has like a few cheeses within it. So again, it's really up to you. You can use Colby, you can use sharp cheddar cheese, mild cheddar cheese. It's really up to you, but you want to use whatever flavors that you like. And I'm only using like 4 cups of cheese in here to make that particular cheese sauce. So I'm going to add it to my noodles that I've drained out, and I'm going to stir it up a little bit, but then also add some more of that cheese sauce before I put it into my casserole dish. On my website, you're going to see like the different cheeses that you can use as some ideas. It's best if you don't use the pre-shredded cheese, but for this particular recipe, because I'm trying to get in and out this kitchen, because you've seen all the things that I've cooked, I am using a pre-shredded cheese. And again, it was the Mexican cheese for this. So I'm adding some more onto the top of this, as well as some mozzarella cheese. And then I'm going to bake this in the oven for 425 degrees for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. So the macaroni and cheese is nice and bubbly and very cheesy, and it's doing all the things. And I'm telling you, this macaroni and cheese is very delicious. And like I said before, if you want to find this recipe, it's on my website at plussizeinchicago.com, and just search macaroni and cheese, and there's going to be a version with the cheese sauce, which is a roux, or you can use the version without the roux. Let's get back outside to the grill. Sausages are done, steaks are done, ribs are done, chicken wings are done. I'm going to use one of my favorite sauces, which is from the TGI Fridays brand, which is a restaurant. I believe they're all over the US, but they have this whiskey sauce and I just love it. So you can also find that on Amazon too. I'll have the link in the video description. So that's it, guys. Dinner is done. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. Shout out to everyone who subscribed. Thank you for coming back and coming to watch me cook again. If you're new here, my name is Angela, and this is my channel Plus Size in Chicago, where I make a lot of easy to cook comfort food meals. You'll also see me reviewing different restaurants in the greater Chicagoland area, or showing you some places I ate and visited while on vacation. Be sure to subscribe and leave a comment and share this video with your friends and family. I'll see you guys next time.